I had triumphs and I had struggles, recovering from addiction, clinical depression, and then ultimately narcissistic abuse. But it was all to create space so I could really experience my power authentically.
Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stevenson, the Odd Man. He'll unpack wisdom and insights from a cross-section of top quality performers in business, media, sports, entertainment, and lifestyle to uncover key elements to help you live your best audacious life ever. So without further ado, here is the Odd Man.
It's Audley Stevenson back for another edition of the most audacious podcast the internet has to offer. You've got it locked to the Audacious Living Podcast, and I appreciate you for being here as we continue our ongoing goal of helping our listeners live their best audacious lives ever. This is episode 202, and Susan Gold is today's guest. The story she'll share is a powerful one because it's one of overcoming challenges and obstacles and the things that life throws at us. And you know, we all know this, that life will test our resilience, and when things get hard and the times appear that there's no end in sight, you know, the onus is on us to get through those instances as quickly as possible. You know, in Susan's case, her challenges started from her childhood. During a difficult upbringing. You know, this trauma followed her through to her adult world, where she stood her ground in the face of that trauma and overcame in a really, really big way. It's a powerful story that I think you'll all appreciate so much. So without any further ado, here is my conversation with Susan Gold. Enjoy. Susan, how are you? And thank you for joining me today here on the Audacious Living Podcast.
How did you name your podcast, Audley? I love that word, audacious. I had to look it up before I got on the line with you.
You know, it literally was just one of the things that literally just came to me in the moment. The quick background, I'll tell you. So this podcast started during the pandemic, as a lot of things did. I had found that, you know, and a lot of people also struggle going through the pandemic because that sense of loss and that separation from the things that we loved. And I experienced that as well. And I remember when I got to that point where it's like, oh, I'm missing this thing. That's why I feel this way, right? Okay, so what else can I do to replace that thing? And I've done podcasting. Podcasting was very, very comfortable because I've done it many times over the years. But I wanted to talk about something that mattered to me and something that was important. So I sort of did this analysis, literally, Susan, I did this analysis where I went back and I looked at sort of my history and I looked at kind of my life and things that mattered to me. And so that red thread, if you will, was that common theme was every victory, every major accomplishment, every success was on the strength of me demonstrating some form of audaciousness. It rang true. Like, oh my gosh, like if I didn't do this, this wouldn't have happened. If I didn't do that, that wouldn't have happened. And that's what kind of got me on the journey, and you know, the rest is history. But yeah, it just kind of came to me in that moment, and it felt right, and it felt natural too, because I also wanted to ensure, and you probably can relate to this as well, that anything that you do, you want to do something that's natural to you, that resonates with you, that matters to you. And so here we are.
Yeah, when I've tried otherwise, it's always backfired.
It does. It absolutely does. And so you spent a lot of time helping people go through that transformation process.
I do now. I was sort of led. You know, I didn't go easily, but yeah, that's been the natural progression.
Yeah. So talk about how you got there then.
Well, I grew up in a really tiny town in central Pennsylvania, and I was the middle of 5 kids. Oh, something is coming on here. Wow, that's weird. Okay, let's start that over.
I didn't hear it. I didn't see it, so we're good.
Every time I touch my earbuds, I get other things that come and join me. It's like little gremlins, MacBook Air.
Yes.
Oh, but I grew up in a chaotic family system, very chaotic family dynamic. And I was bent on going to New York City one way or the other. I was going to make it there. I used to watch Barbara Walters on my beanbag on my belly in my basement. And I was like, I'm going to New York City and I'm going to be like Barbara Walters. Well, I left that family home the morning after I graduated high school. And eventually I did make it to New York City. I was 19 and I was living in Greenwich Village. I had negotiated my way out of college for a winter term and was interning at an arts management company. And so I went back after college, and I wanted to work in the glitzy side of it. I wanted to be in one of those skyscrapers, oddly, with all the celebrities, right?
Yes, of course.
No vanity there.
Love it. It's called stating your intentions.
Exactly. And I wasn't making enough money. On the side, I started taking up personal training before it was chic. And Barbara Walters was one of my clients.
Wow.
Imagine that. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I was swinging along in the entertainment industry and was invited to work for an agent when he left the agency I was with. And that was my big chance to learn. I learned how to negotiate talent deals. But he had a little addiction, a little sexual addiction, and used to excuse me in the afternoons so he could interview young actresses. And it was quite uncomfortable. And one morning at 7 a.m., I rang Barbara's door and she's like, Susan, what's going on? Get in here. And she was an interviewer extraordinaire for a reason. She was highly intuitive, oddly. And she got it out of me that he had tried on me what he was doing every afternoon with others. And I had been sexually harassed. And she said, I'm coming with you this morning. We're going to confront this gentleman. Wow. And I said, I think I'm going to be okay. So I did confront him. He asked if I had everything that I needed. I said yes. And he said, okay, great, you're fired. So I had 2.5 months of cash in the bank. I was newly sober because I discovered I had a problem with alcohol, as was demonstrated in my family. My dad is genius. He's an astrophysicist, but he used to love to pop that cork on the whiskey bottle, 7:30 a.m. You'd hear glug, 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 glug. And so I was newly sober. I had just extricated myself from a very abusive relationship where the man held the purse strings, I'm ashamed to say, but I was terrified I would go back in. So I was very focused on succeeding. And my first deal was to knock on the door of the factory and convince Andy Warhol to do a commercial for Pontiac that he didn't really want to do.
Oh, wow. Very, very, very audacious of you.
I love that word audacious. I wish I knew it then, oddly. I would have stolen it from you.
Well, I make no claims to it, just for the record. I just use it as well. I've clearly stolen it from someone else.
I know, but it goes so well with your first name, you know? I mean, it's just perfect. It was like coutoured.
Right.
So, yeah. So that led me into producing for television. And I became known for matching celebrities to brands. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, it led me to LA, and I thought it was for work. And it was, you know, I had a great job waiting, also in the industry, also producing for television. But ultimately, it was to meet my greatest guru, and that was the man who would become my ex-husband.
Okay. So you gotta do tell. You got a cliffhanger here.
I piqued your interest.
Yeah,
I've got you speechless.
You did.
Well, I'll tell you what. I finally thought I met Prince Charming, and I really was head over heels. He seemed perfect in every way, and we had a son. I bought a home for our family, and the mask started to come off. And I tried to make him accountable through mediation, and we got to the last point. And he folded his arms and his eyes went into little cold slits. And he said, I'm hiring an attorney and I'm filing for divorce. And oddly, you know, that little intuitive voice that we all have that sometimes we sweep away to the side. That voice was like, this is the universe doing for you what you cannot do for yourself.
Yes.
And I followed that voice, and that led me into new territory. Yeah, really an unbelievable, it was like my perfect storm. You know, I had triumphs and I had struggles, recovering from addiction, clinical depression, and then ultimately narcissistic abuse. But it was all to create space so I could really experience my power authentically. I was told I was powerful. I was told, oh, you have everything together. You're so strong. You're so capable. You're so accomplished. But I didn't feel it inside.
Right. Susan, I want to go back to that little voice that we talked about. When that voice spoke to you, did you hear it initially? Because I think oftentimes that voice is always there, but we don't always hear it. I'm just curious whether or not you heard it right away.
So I heard it often when I was little. I was highly intuitive, and I was actually quite telepathic until it became too dangerous and I shut that down. It actually helped me survive. And then I would hear it at points, but often it wasn't convenient, oddly. I don't know if you can I relate to that at all. It wasn't convenient with the path that I wanted to take.
It's not what you wanted. It's not what you wanted to hear.
I was very codependent. I thought I needed a man to be okay. I mean, since second grade and Billy Fritz on the playground, I always needed that male attention and approval. And ultimately, it was quite costly.
Gotcha.
And so by the time I heard that voice on my shoulder when the divorce announcement was made, I listened and I followed. And I still do now. I mean, here I am on the prairie in Montana. This photo behind me is actually a photo out the back slider of my door. This is where I live now after New York City and LA. I never thought I would leave. I thought I would be a city girl, maybe move to Northern California. But yeah, if you would have asked me even 10 years ago, if I'd be living on the prairie in Montana happily, I would have told you what.
And so at that time, would you say that was the first time you really started listening to that intuition or follow it? Because it sounds like you're listening consistently these days.
I am. Yeah. I am. I think the lessons added up. I think the experiences added up to actual wisdom and also to garner more trust in my own being. And that had to come from within. I, like most, was fixing from the outside in. I was an endurance athlete. I was running my body into the ground. I was a brutal taskmaster. I excelled in most everything that I did. I was highly successful, but I didn't feel it inside. And that's toxic.
Wow, that's powerful. That's really, really powerful. When you're not feeling it inside, it can be toxic and damaging to us at the points where we don't always realize it's doing us harm too, right? That's important to understand that where we have these things going on with us, and we almost in some instances accept them as a way of life. That's just the way it is, and meanwhile, it isn't, because we can make those changes. We just haven't realized our own power to do so.
Yeah, or in my case, I just wasn't willing because the fear was so great. And this is someone who was, I was pulling at least 80% in most relationships, certainly in my marriage. And I was terrified I would not be able to make it on my own. It did not make sense. So ultimately, I needed this experience of going through a year in, I can't even call it a home, a domicile, where my husband took up residence in the master bedroom, and I chose a mattress on the floor in a partial conversion in the garage. And that was the billboard I needed to fall on my head. but I didn't crumble, oddly. I took all my training as an endurance athlete, my long time silent meditation work, all the work I had in therapies, different modalities, and I turned that room into a monastery. And I held no contact, including no eye contact, for 1 year with a man that I loved. And I was able to write him his 6-figure check, and he could go on to his next source of supply. And I could fully understand what I was allowing. And I'm grateful to him. He taught me an incredible lesson in self-value and ultimately helped create self-love, because now I know that it comes from inside.
Yes. It's really easy, and I'm so love the fact that you walk away from an experience that's supposed to be crumbling and debilitating and to tear you down. You walk away with these powerful lessons, and so often we do that. We whether it's a relationship or a job or whatever, we walk away going, man, we think the world is over, and don't focus on the lessons, the incredible lessons, and in some instances, life-changing lessons that we walk away with because we're so caught up in the thing that happened. So I'm glad to hear you say that.
I have to agree with you there, Audley. And I think for me, I feel that this earthly experience is a masterclass. It's an incredible schoolroom.
Yes.
Beyond what I've ever experienced in traditional academia. Mm-hmm. And if I'm willing to open to those lessons and see my challenges and my challengers, mm-hmm. just as all actors portraying perfect roles for me to evolve. And I think that's the true gift, and that's the freedom.
Yeah. I love it. Oh, that's so wonderful, Susan. I love it. So what's next? What happens next? So you sort of move through that relationship, and that ends, and it begins, I guess, is it fair to say, a new chapter?
Yeah, there were all kinds of miracles that came in. I turned one of my biggest deals in my career during that experience, and it took care of a lot of the intense bills that were being thrown at me, which was really terrifying, but reassuring, because there was the loot every time. It was like, whoa, affirmation from the universe. And then I turned that little garage into an income suite that paid for half my mortgage, my taxes, and my insurance. I was able to work from home and care for my son as a single mom with love. And my business started to flourish, but it wasn't what I'm doing now.
So you made a change, obviously, then, right? You made a change. What prompted that?
Yeah. Again, that little intuitive voice started chirping. LA's getting a little busy, isn't it? Your central nervous system is working on overdrive. My dog was starting to have anxiety attacks at the same time in late afternoons. She wouldn't walk certain places. There were red flags. There were red flags. My son had just started college. I didn't think that I would leave the state before he graduated, but that little voice. So I listened. I tried to go to West Virginia, oddly. It's so pretty there, and I remembered it. I went to school not too far away from that state, and then was at the Greenbrier doing a junket for Fox later on. And it was so beautiful. It stuck with me. And I was like, okay, I'll go check that out. And it was as beautiful as I remembered, but it didn't have that attraction with my heart, that magic.
Oh man, you're listening. That's what you're doing. What you're describing, Susan, is you listening to that voice, you're listening to your heart, and you're letting that guide you. And that's such a beautiful thing.
So Montana was not on the bucket list. And I had a friend that lives not too far from the Kalispell airport. So she kept encouraging me to come out and look. And right. So I flew in. I said, no illusions. I'm coming in the middle of January. I want to see the ice and the snow after being in Southern California. Oh my gosh, oddly. It was like Lost Horizon or Brigadoon or Camelot. I could feel it.
Wow.
And Kalispell wasn't for me, but I took the 93 up towards Canada and found the town I'm in. And I thought I was happy in urban life, and I was, but I am in rural bliss. This is magic, the expansiveness. There's no way that I can stay in fear for too long. There's too much gratitude, and there's too much nature singing loudly. I finished my book out here. Was not also on the bucket list, oddly. Montana and the book, no.
It's funny. It makes life so exciting because you never really know what's coming, right? Like you got what we think, what we believe we're meant to do, or we're going to achieve, or we're going to go after. But then these other things that creep in, like, oh, wait a second, where'd this come from, right?
Yeah, as long as I'm willing to get off that wheel of control and hop out of the matrix that I've been trained into.
Yeah.
I've been trained as a caretaker.
Yes.
I've been trained to anticipate others' needs, all this to find some semblance of pseudo safety. And it takes a lot of courage to hop out of that cart.
Got you. So the book, give us the title of the book that you finished.
Sure. So it's a taboo topic, but I'll say it anyway. Toxic Family: Transforming Childhood Trauma into Adult Freedom. And Toxic Family was not my title. That's my publisher's title. And I'm like, oh, great. Go Jerry Springer on me, big. But that's the truth, oddly. That's the truth of the book. My title was Magical Illumination because that's what I feel it's been. And as I love my family. I'm grateful for the roles they all played. And I was placed perfectly into that household for what I wanted to experience and move through this time round.
Right.
So it's my personal and professional story. And then there's a workbook in the appendix, and it's actual exercises that I use and that I have used to move through things that I have.
Well. Anyway, so when you talk about the gratitude that you have for your family and what they provided to you, again, the experiences, is and I can totally understand, and I don't want to dishonor anyone that's going through a difficult challenge. Oh well, take the lesson, because what they're going through is difficult. And it is challenging. So I don't want to dishonor and say it's not and minimize in any way. At the same time, when you look at what you can take away, and as long as you're willing to pay attention to those lessons and use them and apply them in your own life, those experiences are just so profound and so valuable at the same time.
So, and let me quantify that statement. It's been decades of work. I think I spent 3 years apart from my mother. I lived on the other side of the country than most of my family. I did not have much engagement. I did engage, but just not often. So it has been a long growing process for me to make this transition and to see it from this viewpoint. That's why I'm hoping others can get it faster.
The expression where my autobiography can be someone else's survival guide. So maybe on that point, I get people to get it faster and shorten or reduce. Their learning curve is really what you're after. So I think that makes sense.
At least jump a couple of lily pads in the pond, oddly.
Nothing wrong with that. At all. I just so love the journey, the journey that you've taken thus far, and obviously it's far from over. But if you sort of continue on it, we're kind of following your path here. So you get to rural Montana, you fall in love with it, and what happens next?
Yeah, I went back to California. I put my house on the market. I was like, what am I doing? It sold in a week. Yeah. And then I went, wow, I'm going to do this. And I held firm. I have friends that put their houses on the market, packed up, and then couldn't do it. But I was like, yeah, I'm going to continue to follow that voice. It did not prove me wrong. So, yeah, I came out to Montana. I finished my book. I'm lucky that I have work that I can do remotely. And I'm continuing with that work. And yeah, I'm doing the work of my soul. I had another podcast host, Vicky Helm, who she's a circuit speaker. She used to open for Eckhart Tolle and a lot of the big law of attraction speakers. And she said, yeah, you've had an amazing career. You've had incredible life experiences, but this is your mission. This is your purpose. This is why you're here. And she's so right. I mean, I can even feel the chill bumps as I'm saying it. And I was really lost. I did do well. I did have incredible opportunity. I was privy to see things that people often only dream of. And I'm grateful for that. But I'm profoundly appreciative that I finally feel my authentic purpose and where I really can give back as a human being. Because man, this can be a rough walk, oddly, not for the faint of heart. Sometimes I feel like I'm in the straight up toughest place in the universe.
You're absolutely right. And that's why I love the sharing aspect of it, because when you're going through a difficult moment or a challenging time, it's really easy to think that no one in the world has any concept or understanding of what you're experiencing. But the moment you learn of someone else's story that's close or remotely close, or there's some similarities, it changes the landscape, and all of a sudden the possibilities start to arise, and this isn't as bad, or just to know that someone's gone through a similar experience does wonders. And that's why I love the sharing aspect of this journey for you.
It's really been important to me. There have been so many people, known and unknown, that have held me on to this planet. There have been many times where I've debated whether I want to stay and if I can take one more step in the trudge. But I am grateful that I didn't quit before the miracle.
Right. And again, when you look at, for even the addictions challenge that you had, that in itself would have been enough. But that's, you had to overcome more than just that, and your childhood and the experience with that place you worked at where you were sexually assaulted. I mean, all these sorts of things that you had to go through, that you did get through successfully to get to this point. And so, for maybe the average person, just one of those is enough, but you had to go through a whole whack of them.
I think next time I come in, I'm going to read the fine print.
We all can, but it might spoil that'd be a spoiler, right?
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, I definitely took off the big end of the bread on this one. That's for sure.
Yeah. And so writing the book, that must have been so rewarding and satisfying. I guess and I know that the book writing process is a little bit of a purge, if you will, too, that gives you that release. But at the same time, to know that you can take that release and turn it into something helpful, that's got to be so rewarding.
Well, honestly, I really was hesitant to go diving back in. Those things were in pretty compartments, I had it all figured out, right? No, it was destiny. I feel like I wanted to leave a legacy. Mm-hmm. And you're right, I have been through much and I have prevailed, and I wanted to share that. I was a bulldog, though. I took my skills as a producer and transferred it into being a first-time author, which I would not recommend. I made myself sit at my computer for 15 minutes a day, whether I liked it or not, whether I had something to write or not. And I did get a manuscript that way, the first pass anyway, but I didn't feel connected to it. So a very wise mentor said, why don't you go back through the manuscript and write it from little Susie's point of view, that little one inside your heart that's walked through all this. And I thought, yeah, she's got a point. As much as I've battled with that inner child, oh my gosh, I remember in my 20s, Drama of the Gifted Child came out by Alice Miller. I don't know. Anyway, I was like, seriously, we got to go to this. Like, I just got to dust off and keep going. But this has been key. And that's when the beauty of the brocade all came together. And that's where my heart cracked open even more, and more layers of that black soot that had been hardened melted. And it's not so much, oddly, that the manuscript changed. It didn't change so much, but my connection with that person who walked through it all was evolutionary.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Susan, I want to talk a little bit about trauma and particularly the childhood trauma. You know, for individuals, in some cases, it's very easy to pinpoint. This happened during my childhood, and this is the start of what, you know, these limiting beliefs I've kept my entire life that's followed me to my adulthood. But there are times when we're not able to pinpoint it as easily. It's not as identifiable. It's not as in your face. It's a bit more hidden or sometimes invisible. I wonder if you sort of talk about the process of uncovering these sorts of traumatic experiences that live in our lives that we don't see right away. How do you uncover those?
So I'm really glad you brought that up. And a lot of the abuse I experienced was overt, but there was a lot of covert abuse, and it has taken me a long time. And I'm glad you used that word process. I have 3 brothers and a sister. We all experience that upbringing very differently. And I do have memories that date back 18 months, 2 years old, very specific memories. And then some other things, it's been like a bit of Sherlock Holmes, piecing the pieces of the puzzle together. But what I learned ultimately was it didn't matter. What mattered was what I was feeling in my being at that moment. You know, there were many times I was in a provider's office, a therapist, mentor, a meditation teacher, a traumatic, trauma PTSD expert. It didn't matter that I didn't remember my brother using me as the lab experiment in the back bedroom. I didn't have to piece that together. I had the visceral trauma locked. And while it was important for me to get the storyline down, the narrative with verbal talk, what ultimately made the difference was somatic work. And that meant going into my body. Where was the trauma? Oh, it's here in my solar plexus. I can feel it.
Right.
Is it current? Is it past? How old are you? Is it ancient? Is it from the future? Where is this?
Right.
What is it like? Is it like taffy? Is it like stone? And then to really let go of the feelings associated with it. I feel abused. I feel victimized. I'm going to be crushed. I can't breathe. I need help. And clearing all that out and then filling it with white or golden light, that really shifted the neural pathways. That changed my being and my cellular structure.
And that change happens so quickly, almost immediately. It's just like, bam, there you go, like, oh, wow. And it makes you, as you kind of go through, you're like, oh, like, why did I discover this sooner? That feeling.
Because we didn't, because it wasn't in the playbook, I guess.
Right.
I don't know.
That's right. Well, it almost, because and I don't want to use the word easy because it's not an easy process. But when you get to the other side of it, you're really looking and say, okay, this is a wonderful place to be, right? And it wasn't easy to get there, but it's a wonderful place to be, and that's the part of the story that I love a lot. On this podcast, we talk about this. So we've got this it's called the BOLD framework, right? BOLD, and this is to live a more audacious life. B stands for better than yesterday, so it's ongoing, continuous self-improvement. The O is for outlasting adversity, which you clearly have done, because we believe here that when you get to the other side, that's where all our greatness lies. That's where it's the things that will bring us the happiness and the joy and the freedom and the ability to impact others is on the other side of adversity. We've got to go through the adversity to get there. And so when we talk about the childhood traumas and the challenges in our lives and the things that come up that we didn't want, the unpleasant circumstances, all of these things, it's outlasting that. Get to the other side of that, Susan, which you've clearly done.
I love that little acronym that you have. I studied it before I came on,
How did you?
and I
So
can relate to it.
So let's finish off. The L is for live your truth. We certainly want to encourage authenticity. And then D is for disrupt the norm, which is create your own lane, create your own path, be that trailblazer. And so, and that's really the framework we operate here under, just in terms of how we want to move forth in this world. But the O, I dedicate the O to you, Susan.
Oh, wow. That is,
diversity.
I have chill bumps everywhere, oddly. That's a high honor.
Well, but you've done it. It's exactly what you've done. Like, it's not, so it's not just this thing that we've made up and say, hey, let's come up with this cool acronym. No, this is your experience, right? And so, this is, so you created a vivid example to say, no, the O is for real, and Susan can tell you about it, right? So that's what you've done.
We're all here for purpose, that's for sure.
Absolutely. So wonderful. Susan, I love the story. I truly mean that, and I love the fact that you come on to share your bit of your journey, what you the work that you've had to do, and I want to really stress that this is work, right? This isn't something that we just sort of wake up one day and hey, okay, well, good now. Like, there's a process, as I said earlier, there's a process we go through it, and and sometimes you got to go really deep, and that's where the work comes in, and you've clearly done that. I'm really happy to hear you share all that you've done so.
Yeah, that's the privilege of being a human being, of getting this bodysuit to walk around in. Yeah, this is the gift. Like, grab it.
Yeah.
Grab it.
I love the word privilege. I love the word privilege, because it's exactly what it is, exactly how we should be living our lives. That this is, we have the opportunity to live in this place called Earth, and to impact and to be connected to each other. And so you've done all that. And so congratulations. I love it.
Audley, thank you. And thanks for having me here today, having this open conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for the energy you bring your audiences. Thanks for the production value. I know it takes time. It takes effort. It takes focus. It's not easy. It can be lonely. It can be hard. It can be unrewarding as much as it can be rewarding.
You got it.
So thank you.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. And for Susan, for our listeners that wanted to connect with you or learn more about you, or snag a copy of your book, where can we send them?
Just go to susangold.us. It's all there.
Awesome. Susan, thank you for the time today. An absolute honor. And again, congratulations on the great work, and keep it going.
Thanks, Audley. You too. And same with your audience.
Now back we are here on the podcast, and much thanks and appreciation goes out to Susan for being here and stopping by to share her very, very powerful story. Do remember her book, Toxic Family, Transferring Childhood Trauma into Adult Freedom, is available now, and I'd encourage you to pick yourself up a copy. I truly appreciated so much of what Susan had to share with us today, but if there's just one thing that I take from our chat, it would have to be this. All of us face difficulties at some point in our lives, and questioning whether to give up or keep pushing forward is very, very real. While it may be tempting to succumb to adversity, it is crucial to understand the importance of persevering through tough times. Here are a few of the profound benefits that arise from pushing forward in the face of adversity. Difficult times test our strength, character, and resilience. It's during hardships that we discover our true potential as we learn to navigate through obstacles. By pushing forward in challenging times, we build our resilience, recognize capabilities, and unlock personal growth. Enduring difficult times offers a chance to gain experiences that will shape us into more compassionate, empathetic, and wise individuals. These moments provide a broader perspective, enhancing our understanding of others and enabling us to connect on a deeper level. Venturing through hard times fosters emotional growth and allows us to develop a greater appreciation for life's moments. Amidst challenging situations, we often find opportunities for growth and progress that would have otherwise remained hidden. Pushing forward requires us to remain open-minded and vigilant, enabling us to identify alternative paths and new possibilities. If you think about it, some of life's greatest achievements were born out of difficult times, highlighting the hidden potential that lies within adversity. Success is often linked to persistence and resilience in the face of adversity. Many trailblazers and successful individuals reach their goals only after overcoming difficult setbacks. Pushing through difficult times teaches us skills necessary for achieving aspirations. Things like determination, patience, adaptability, and resourcefulness. It's just the act of pushing forward. It paves the way for remarkable achievements. While it may be tempting to surrender during difficult times, embracing the power of perseverance is essential for personal growth, resilience, and success. Such moments challenge our character, broaden our perspectives, and open the doors to new opportunities. By pushing forward, we cultivate strength and resilience, uncover hidden potential, and ultimately achieve our goals. As we come to understand the significance of pushing forward through difficult times, we equip ourselves with a valuable skill set that will serve us throughout life's audacious journey. Hey, listen, if you haven't registered for email notifications of the podcast, do know that you could do so simply by heading over to bestaudaciouslife.com and enter into your email address, and you'll be alerted every time new content that comes out. We've reached the end of another edition of the Audacious Living Podcast, and as always, I got to send my thanks and appreciation to all those lovers of audaciousness, our amazing viewers and listeners for continuing to support this podcast. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audacious Stevenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.